Right.
Reimagine.
Reimagine.
That's the new term nowadays that they're using for film.
Really?
Yeah. I'm not sure if they're supplying to music as well, but I get it. You're listening to Devil Tongue and Phantom Other on the Devil Tongue and Phantom Other show. We're all over the place on Spreaker.com.
Sure enough.
Follow us on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, Skype. Get at me at devil.tongue@gmail.com. And for those of you who are wondering, this is Roughneck featuring Yvonne. Everybody be somebody.
When you're trying to reimagine.
So let's talk a little bit about that because, quick reminder, we don't use government names on this show, but I was speaking to a good friend of ours, and we were talking about, well, again, the term is now reimagine. You're probably familiar with remake. And we were discussing, what's the latest remake? It,
maybe. I think it was, but I mean, there's a whole bunch.
Well, yeah, there's a whole bunch.
But it is one you could talk about.
Here's the thing. The horror movies that we grew up with arguably were very scary. Arguably they worked as far as the fear factor. The Exorcist, Nightmare on Elm Street, Halloween.
Omen.
Yeah, definitely the Omen. So when these... I'm gonna put it on the producers first, if not the writers.
Go ahead.
No, matter of fact, I'm not even gonna put it on the writers really so much. When they talk about reimagining, it's because they just are not that creative and have run out of ideas.
I would say yes, and I would say that what happened is that it's now a money-making business. It doesn't have to do with the art anymore. It doesn't have to do with the cinematography, which is the film, the scenery, the texture of it. It has nothing to do with that. It's all about dollars and cents now. That's why, it's really sad to see how independent film has fall off so bad.
Well, let's face it. If you and I had come up with a small budget, we can make our own film. And, because thanks to technology, you don't need to use film. Everything's digital anyway.
True. But what makes it suck is that since you grew up on live film instead of digital, blue screens and stuff like that, sometimes it cheapens the story. Because what happened is that you have a lot of movies today that depend on special effects and not on dialogue. And that's what sucks a lot.
Well, put it back on the writers. Ta-da! If the script is garbage, then the movie's going to be garbage. I don't care how much special effects you put into the movie. What's the one thing I've always told you, and I'm saying this as a general broad question. You take Frasier. If Frasier had an all-black cast, it would still be funny. Because the writing is what makes it so. Shout out to Kelsey Grammer. I love Frasier.
That's right. You're right. I mean, I used to watch that show back in the day as well. But what happened is that everything is not quality, it's quantity. And the quantity is how much dollars we can make off of it. If it's not a blockbuster hit or a blockbuster maker or it doesn't have blockbuster luster over it, then what's the purpose of even having it?
Well, here's the problem. When the movie is projected to make, let's just say 10 million, and it took them 4 million to make. They projected to make 10, and it only made 900,000. Now, whose fault or where does the fault lie? Is it marketing? Is it, I don't know.
Well, I think it's more the wind and the prayer. I think that's what happens. They all go on this hope, on a wind and a prayer, thinking like, wow, we have the latest movie or the latest blockbuster, and then it ends up being a flop. And then you have these films that end up making not that much to make, and then they're being blockbusters. And that's happened a lot of times now, where the movie that's been cheaply made has been the most money maker. And the reason why is because, remember, if you have a small budget, you can't afford special effects. So basically, you have to create your own effects, that's number one. And you got to have a strong dialogue, script, and then on top of that, you got to have good players as in actors. If you don't have the good actors and the good script, then you really have a shitty film. But if you have those two good things going on at the same time, simultaneously, you have a really good script going on, and you will have a good film.
I'm going to counter you on one thing, though.
Go ahead.
You can make a movie that has absolutely no special effects. The ideas that you've thrown at me as far as our brainstorming sessions, okay, special effects are what they are. However, let's say we used to make a movie called We're Just Talking, which is one camera and it's just you and I talking. What's the need for special effects? You understand my point?
Right.
You could, throw all that in later.
Right.
But there's really no need for it.
True.
I remember, because we both took video editing. When you do the wipes and you do the fades. Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's special effects as well. But if you're talking about the grand stuff, like the car explosions and things like that, depending on your script, that's not necessary. That sensationalism to me works when the writer can't write. Period. It's one thing to have, I don't know, Jet Li or Jackie Chan in a movie, and I guess because they're action heroes, you expect all the stunts and the flips and everything. But if your protagonist is, let's say, a mailman, then really, there's no need for all that.
True that.
Unless you do Ralphie the Mailman Saves the Block, a whole bunch of, I don't know.
That's some crazy crap.
Well, I'm just using that as an example. Don't anybody steal it. Where basically, a whole bunch of terrorists come onto the block and they're going to take over the block and launch missiles from the block, and Ralphie stops them. Okay, then I guess there would be a need to have, great explosions and stuff.
No. I think, what we miss, and I sound kind of corny right now, a good love story. A good love story. A good coming-of-age story. You know what I miss? I miss a good coming-of-age story that has a comedic side to it. Case in point, a lot of John Hughes. If you're not familiar with John Hughes, he was a director of 16 Candles. Who was another one?
Wow.
It was 16 Candles.
Better Off Dead?
No.
That wasn't John Hughes.
No, but I like Better Off Dead. Like stuff like that.
Okay.
Better Off Dead was good too. But that wasn't John Hughes. It was 16 Candles.
The Breakfast Club.
The Breakfast Club. And there was another one, I can't remember. 16 Candles. Oh, Pretty in Pink.
Right.
And when he did this, he really, looked at teen angst. But it was funny because you could relate to it. But it's sad now because, everything now is either sexual or violent. Nobody has a good time anymore.
Because the times have changed.
No, but laughter hasn't.
No, laughter hasn't. You're right.
Laughter hasn't. And comedies are still needed. But comedies don't have to be gross. You know what I'm saying? Like, you're using body fluids and stuff like that to use as comedy. No, what about dialogue? What about, like you say, reimagine, and why don't you use your words to be funny and use, scenarios like Lucille Ball and modernize that instead of you having to be gross and using waste.
All right, you want to talk about being corny?
Go ahead.
Let's pick on Disney for example. Remember the Shaggy DA?
Yes.
Remember the Apple Dumpling Gang?
Yes.
Remember Freaky Friday? I'm not sure that was Disney.
Yes, it was.
But as far as innocence,
yes,
that's really what has been lost. Because these movies were funny without being offensive.
Yes, they were. But now something always had to have like a sexual undertone. Or it has to be somewhere that the joke is a little bit vicious. I don't know if that's the correct word, as the joke is not really funny. It's more of being vicious towards someone.
It's crude.
Right. And the thing that gets to me is that, you're looking at this and, people are entertained, don't get me wrong. And I'm not saying like, you can watch whatever you want to watch or whatever.
But everything still has to be age appropriate.
You're right.
We can argue that you wouldn't show this to a 5 or 6 year old child.
No, but you got somebody 5 and 6 watching it. You know, and it's funny because if you look at, I remember, you know, back in the 80s that there were certain, they weren't considered porn movies, but they had like a strong sexual overtone. Looking for Mr. Goodbar.
Strong sexual content, right?
Right. And, I saw movies like that as a teenager. And I mean, I understood what was going on. You know, it was sexual, this and that. You know, he was a gigolo. You know, women paid him to be with him. And then he found a woman that he wanted to be with, but he couldn't separate his job of being a gigolo and him loving her was a whole different other story. And so, you know, it was kind of, you know, when you look at stuff like that, you're like, wow, you know, the writing was great. The I would say the sex scenes were nice. You know what I'm saying? They weren't crude. They weren't nasty. It wasn't disgusting. It fit in. Everything now is a fit in. You know, you fit in explosions because you know what? You're filling in a gap to make people ooh and ah. You filling in like vicious sex scenes and violent sex scenes to make people go ooh and ah. You're doing things to children in movies now. As once upon a time, we really didn't see it to go ooh and ah.
Well, I'm going to go one better.
Go ahead.
I actually, and I'm taking this way back now, I actually got denied interest to an R-rated movie. That doesn't happen anymore. Not unless they still do it in the Midwest somewhere.
You know, it's funny. I never got denied for an R-rated. And I think, wasn't Crush Groove R-rated?
I don't remember, to be honest. It might have been PG.
Oh, I don't remember.
Well, remember, we didn't have the rating system we have now. Because now it's G, PG, PG-13.
Right.
You know, we didn't have all that. It was just straight up GPGR.
Because I remember, as you said, you got turned back. You know, you got turned away. The only time that I didn't really get turned away, what happened was we went to go see Crush Groove. And then they tried to pull the rating system on us. So it was coincidentally, there was a man. He was an older man. And it was me and my friend. And I was like, listen, we with you, all right, man? He was like, okay. So when we got to the front, he was like, oh, you know, we not letting. I said, no, I'm here with my uncle. So didn't even know the dude from Adam. Like, yo, my uncle. Yo, and we got tickets and went in. I was like, really? Come on now. It's Crush Groove, really.
Well, that's back when society cared and they really were trying to protect.
You know what? You made a good statement. I was thinking about that. I was seriously thinking about that. And I said, you know what? We live in a fucked up world right now, for real.
Of course we do.
I said, we got a fucked up president. I was like, yo, man. I was like, really? I said, when you look back, when you look back at these shows called the decades or whatever it is, and they go back like decades into the 70s and 80s and Reaganomics and all of that garbage, I was like, we're really fucked up. I said, we are blatant racists now. Nobody is PC. You want people to be PC, but we're not PC anymore, really.
When you can kick a Cub Scout out of the Cub Scouts because he just asked an innocent question related to...
Oh, no, excuse me. He used his freedom of speech.
Right.
Okay. He used his freedom of speech to ask.
He used his freedom of speech to ask, you know, well, I forgot what he asked word for word. But then he's being kicked out of the Cub Scouts? What kind of message are you sending to that child? Oh, if you challenge authority, then this is what we're going to do. And he wasn't even challenging authority, not really. He's being inquisitive.
This world is really getting screwed up.
Getting?
It's getting there. It hasn't gotten there yet, but it's getting there. And you know what is true about the Bible? They're talking about the end. These are the signs of the last days and stuff like that. Which, you know what, I'm starting to believe. At first, I thought it was more like a theory. It's starting to come out more as a fact. And the thing about it is that, you know, it's funny. I'm gonna tell you how it all really changed. It all started changing when we start not knowing our neighbors. When we don't know our neighbors, we don't know ourselves. And I'm not saying you don't, when I mean not knowing yourself, I'm not saying, excuse me, I'm not saying that you're a stranger or, you know, you keep to yourself. What I'm saying is that, God forbid, if anything happens to you in the street, at least your neighbor will come and call and help or, you know, call the ambulance or do something. You fall out in the street right now, your neighbors will close their curtains and act like they didn't see a damn thing. You will die on the curb and that will be the end of you.
And the weird thing is, there are still some decent neighborhoods where people do look out for one another.
And there's still some decent neighbors that still come out and say hello and, ask what your name really is.
But across the board, to a large extent and scale, we don't have that. We got so far off the topic of reimagine.
No, but that's not true. That's all reimagine. We reimagine that we can be better people.
But that has to become a reality. I'm not imagining that.
No, but it has to be a thought first, and then we have to execute.
Okay. We're trying to be in the execute stage. That's what we're trying to say. Very true. Right now, we're going to execute this episode. But thank you for listening.
Thank you.
So do some more reimagining of yourself. And remember, Devil Tongue, Phantom Other.
See ya.
We're always here for you.